Hi again. So this is a video I spoke about in my first video, which is about the surgical management of the miscarriage I had. And I wanted to make another separate video because I wanted to be able to go into detail, not too much detail, but a bit more into detail about what happened and kind of step by step through the day. Purely because I think if I would have wanted to watch something like this before I went through it. And again, like I said in the other video, um, this is my experience that was on the NHS, so I can't comment on um, other countries, but I just wanted to do one from a British perspective. So bit of background just in case no one's watched the other video. I had a miscarriage. I had a scan at 9 weeks 3 days. A baby was fine, had a heartbeat. 2 weeks later I had another scan, which was a rescan because I wasn't happy with the first one. If I hadn't requested I wouldn't have got it, so it was more of after I complained about something they gave me a free one. So I was 11 weeks, and at that scan, I found out that the baby didn't have a heartbeat and had reduced in size to 7 weeks and 3 days. So I'm not too sure when the heart stopped beating. I'm assuming it must have been not too long after the original 9 week scan, but obviously it had shrunk quite a bit in that time, so I'm assuming that's what happened. It must have died quite soon after that. I specifically wanted surgical management. As I spoke about in my other video, that was purely because I didn't want to go through the trauma of having the medical management or the expected management, which was like the natural way. I didn't want to do that. I just didn't want to put myself through it again after, obviously, this is the second miscarriage I've had. Granted, the first one was very early on, and that was expected management where I just audibly didn't, and I didn't have any kind of help along with that. After finding out about the heartbeat not being there, I did a lot of research, obviously, into how to manage it, and I felt that the surgical option was the best way for me. I am a nurse and, well, health visitor now, and I'm used to hospitals. I am used to kind of the way things. I've worked briefly in theatres, so I know kind of just having surgery in general. So it doesn't really frighten me. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but I was happy to have that. So that I had the appointment made for me on the Monday. This was nearly a week, just over 2 weeks, no, a week ago. I had it on the RPC was booked in for the 19th of June, and we are the 28th, 29th today. I should have checked that. So they asked you to come in for 10 o'clock to a ward, and they said that I needed to be no by mouth, so I wasn't allowed to drink anything. Me and my husband went to the ward for that time. When I arrived, they put us in the day room, which is just like a room full of chairs that patients usually would go into during the day and watch TV and stuff, but obviously they were using that as like a waiting room essentially. So they spoke to a auxiliary nurse, which is like a nurse's aide, or a support nurse. He said, "Oh, you're gonna have to hang on for a few minutes because there's no bed available." So I said to him, "Well, what's a few minutes?" And he said, "Well, we don't know yet, there's no beds, we have to wait for people to be discharged." So great. But, you know, like I said, I work at the NHS, I know these things happen. There were two other women in that day room with me, which I can only assume were there for the same reason. I didn't speak to any of them. My husband was with me. We sat in that room for hours. I think it must have been about 12 o'clock, maybe later, that a nurse in the ward would call us in individually into a different room. And obviously you're just sitting there waiting for your name to be called because you want to have an idea of what was going on. And obviously for me, we were meant to be going on holiday that night, like traveling up to the airport and flying the next morning. So I was very keen to kind of get out of there. to get it done and get out there. They eventually called me in. It was a nurse and, again, a auxiliary nurse who they did my blood pressure. They had a chat with me about what was going to happen. So if I can remember, they went through like a history, asked me what had happened, which, you know, you don't really want to go through, but so there we are. Went through that. Again, like I said, did do blood pressure and stuff like that. They put a wristband on me. They then went through, what do you want to happen to the remains? I'm assuming that's the best way to describe it. So obviously, what I should say is, so an ERPC is evacuation of retained products of conception. As far as I'm aware, it's something similar to what they do if you have an abortion, I think. I don't quote me on that because I haven't looked into it, but that's my understanding. What they do for this is what I found online was they put a speculum in, like when you have a smear, and they dilate your cervix and then stick a suction catheter, essentially, I think, a suction catheter, which is like a soft bendy tube that sucks everything out. So like the lining and the products of conception, which is the baby and placenta and all that stuff. So that's done in general anesthetic, so you obviously are put to sleep. I won't talk about the rest of that, I'll come to that in a minute. So back to that in the room. So she asked me if they were happy for them to take the remains or products of conception, the baby, to dispose of it, and I think they cremate them. They did. I think there is an option that if you wanted to take it home and do something with it yourself, like bury it, that's up to you. I didn't want to do that. They get you to sign a form. They asked me if I wanted to see the bereavement midwife, and I said, is that just to do with bereavement, or is that, could I speak to her about, miscarriage, testing and, future pregnancies? She said, no, it was just about bereavement. So again, that was something I didn't want to do. It wasn't really for me. I don't want to kind of talk to anyone else about it. Whether that seems strange, I don't know. That's, again, it's me. And then they said, did I want a memory box? Now, I asked what that was, or what was in, I know kind of what a memory box is, but what was in it? And she said, oh, it's a ribbon and like a piece of paper. And at the time I said, no, I don't want that. I mean, I've got enough memory of this baby and I've got scanned photos, and I don't really want like a box to look at to remember. I just, again, wasn't something I wanted to do. What I would say that I didn't really tell my husband about this, I don't know if he really wanted either, but I kind of took the executive decision on that myself because he was not in the room. So yeah, they get you to sign everything and then they send you back to the waiting room, day room, and then you wait some more. And waiting was me reading my Kindle because that's the only thing there was to do. I think my husband played on his phone. I found reading very helpful around this because it kind of took my mind off things, and I could kind of read someone else's story and not have to think about my position. But then they started a doctor then would call each one of us through. I was last, obviously, because the one day I didn't want to be last, it was the day I was last. And he finally called me, which must have been, I should say, I did mention when I was in the nurse about the circumstances, and I don't expect to be prioritised over anyone. I just wanted to see how long I was going to be there and where I was on the list, because when you have theatres running, they have a list of obviously who's going down first and stuff like that. So I wanted to know where I was on the list, and I just did. Yeah. So doctor calls me we went to go back to that original room, but there was already someone in that room, so we had to come back out to the corridor, and he had to go through his questions to me in the corridor, which wasn't great. He said to me, and this is one of the things I think that probably set me off. He said, so you're having a ERPC for the management of your miscarriage. And I said yes, because that's why I was there, but it was just the fact that we were standing in a corridor, and for someone that was like kind of the first time someone said it to me, and I had to kind of say yes. And he just went through things like any medical problems, any allergies. You get asked about a million times if you have allergies. Any regular medication, just again, history. And then he sent me back to day room again, because someone was in the room because he needed to do bloods on me, but couldn't do that, unfortunately, in the hallway. So I went back and sat down, and another thing I should say about this point, like that day, I was furious with the world. I was so angry at everything. My husband, I think I said about 3 words to him at that point, like the whole day. I was just so angry at everything, and I know that's not a healthy way to deal with things, but at that point I was just so angry at him and the world. Not at him, but that's wrong, but at the world in general for putting me in that position. So I didn't really speak to him in that room. He asked me what they would, when I'd come back, he'd ask me what they were doing, and I'd say, apparently the list for theatre was starting at 1:30, and I think this time it was 1:15, and they hadn't done bloods on me or anything yet, so I was getting a bit angry again. The other 2 ladies were called through, and I was left, and then they called me through into that other room again, where the doctor did bloods. They do like a standard clotting and what's called a group and safe, which is medical. My nursing stuff is a bit rusty, but group and safe looks at your blood type. So if you needed to have a blood transfusion, they could already know what your blood type was, because obviously anything to do with obstetrics and stuff, there is likelihood that you will bleed. So we did the bloods. He then left me in that room and said, right, you need to see the registrar, which is like a middle grade doctor. So you have consultants, registrars, and SHO. So I'm assuming he was a SHO. But it was a lady, and by this point I was really upset. Like, I was crying, and I could not stop crying. I was trying to calm myself down, but I was just really, really upset. And they were all like, oh, are you okay? And I was just like, no, not really. And all I kept thinking to myself was, I shouldn't be here. I really shouldn't be here. I'm sitting in a room where I've got to go to theatre to have surgical management of a miscarriage, and I literally would rather be anywhere. And this is not an ideal situation. So this nice lady registrar comes in, and I was probably a bit rude to her in the way that she was talking to me, and I said, look, I know, because they just go through the same things over and over again, and I know they have to do that, and I know that because from a nursing perspective, I know what they have to do, and they have to go through things for you because you have to sign a consent form. But the way I felt, I was just like, yes. And she said, oh, look, I'm really sorry, but I do have to go through it with you. And she then went through, obviously, the options again, which I thought was a bit like, well, I'm already chosen to be here for the surgical management, whatever, let's just get it done. And she's like, right, well, went through all the other ones, like the expectant and the medical, and then she said, right, so the risks with this are that they can, when they're sticking the suction catheter into your uterus, it's a blind procedure, so they can't see in there, which, fair enough, you want to stick your head up there. And there's a risk of the suction catheter perforating your uterus, and so that's a risk. And obviously she said, if that does happen and it goes through and back in, that's okay, because that can heal. it's when if it goes through and then into another organ, which, for example, your bladder or bowel, which are around your uterus, that could cause damage. And then if that happens, they have to do what's called a laparotomy, which is when they cut from your belly button down to kind of open up and do some exploratory to make sure, or to see what's been damaged. So obviously that's quite a big risk, and you don't really want to wake up with a massive scar. But I know they tell you this, and those are the risks, and they happen in, I think she said that it happens 1 in 500, 1 in 1,000. The odds for me were, didn't change my mind. But it did almost feel like they were kind of trying to put you off a bit, and I do understand that, like, yeah, okay, there's risks are with that, and obviously you have a general anaesthetic, but maybe it was just me being cynical or what, but thinking they were trying to put me off it. But anyway, it didn't. So she got me to sign a consent form which had all those risks on it, and I had to say that I understood that, which I did. She also said then, right, well, we need to give you like a pessary of the misoprostol. It's the one that they use for the medical management. It softens your cervix, so it makes it easier to dilate it. So she said, right. I said, well, can I do that myself? Because I kind of wanted to, because I don't really want anyone fishing around up there again. And she said, well, it's better if someone does it for you, because they can get it right really far up. So went along with it. I then saw a anaesthetist, and strangely enough, because obviously I was so upset, crying. I mean, I could barely say a lot of the things I was saying to these doctors because I was crying, and they probably thought, oh my God, please, please stop. But I saw the anaesthetist, and for some reason he just made me feel better. And I don't know whether it was his manner or what, but obviously I've worked with a lot of anaesthetists and doctors, and the anaesthetists do have this kind of quirky way about them, and he did kind of make me feel better, and I did kind of calm down when I spoke to him. And he just goes through your anaesthetic part of it. They make you open your mouth. They ask you about when you last ate or drank. Kind of just go through, have you got any allergies again? That type of thing. Yeah, so then they finally found me a bed. Can you believe it? So the other nurse from the ward came in, and she did the pessary, which, again, surprise, surprise, I got upset about. I probably came across as having the worst attitude in the world, so, but okay. So she did that. That was nice. Then they took me to the bed, and one of the girls that was in the waiting room with me was on the bed opposite, and I think she was second. So it wasn't long, and they came for her to take her to theatre. I hadn't even put my gown on at this point because I was kind of thinking it was going to be ages. So I was sitting there reading. I don't know what it was. Initially, when I went sat down, I didn't really, again, speak to my husband. I calmed down then, and I kind of must have had this thing, like, this is happening whether you like it or not. So I did calm down, and I did speak to him, and it did feel a lot better when I stopped being a massive bitch. So but then they came to take me to theatre, so I had to put my gown on. They had to put these sheets, they're called Inco sheets, down on the bed, obviously for stuff when it comes out. They took me down to theatre, they took me to the anaesthetic room, and they put a cannula in by there, which they inject the anesthesia, I can't say it, anesthetic drugs into your cannula. They were really nice. Everyone was lovely, but it was the anaesthetist was there, and he talked to me about when I used to work in A&E, and it was just kind of normal. There was no kind of, so tell me about when you had a miscarriage, and tell me this, and let's go through it again. It was just normal. They put stickies on your chest, put the thing on your finger that measures your oxygen and your pulse, blood pressure. Then they get you to lie down. They put this big mask over your face, which is oxygen, and give you some oxygen, and then they start giving you the drugs. So the first one I think they give you is like a really strong painkiller, and it makes you feel all like ooh. And then the next one is the one that puts you to sleep, and that is in a white coloured liquid. It's also the stuff that Michael Jackson took an overdose of. Propofol. Fact for you. That is what makes you go to sleep, and they obviously give you other drugs as well, but that's the one that I remember last, and it really hurt going into your hand. And the next thing that happened was I was waking up, and I asked what time it was. So I had gone down just before 4 o'clock, about 10 to 4, and I woke up 5 o'clock? Yeah. So it was really quick. They did say that the procedure only took about 15 minutes, and obviously the time it takes for you to go to sleep and to wake up is what takes the longest. There's a nurse with you who was lovely, and she actually said to me, I said, oh, how long am I going to have bleeding for? And she said, up to 2 weeks. And she said, when it happened to me, it was about 2 weeks. And I thought, oh my God, you know, I thought that was so lovely that she would tell me that that had happened to her as well. And it did make me feel a lot better, because it does happen a lot. And for her to say that, I just thought that was a really, really nice thing to say. And I said to her, oh, I said that must have been horrible to have to go through that with working in the department. She said, oh no, I didn't come into hospital, I just let it just take its course. And she said, I don't think I could have come in to have that done. So, but that was, like I said, very something so simple as someone telling you what they've been through, but it really, really helped me. I was really thirsty, I had a horrible taste in my mouth, so she gave me a drink. There was, next to my bed, there was the notes from, they print off kind of what was done. I was kind of craning to look, still a bit like woozy, and the fact I didn't have my glasses on and I can't see distance, so I was kind of a bit looking around like that. And I said, can I have a look at it? And she let me see, and it just said, there's no follow-up or anything. You can't wear tampons for 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks? I think it's 2 weeks until bleeding stopped, just for infection. No intercourse until the bleeding stopped. I think that was it. So they waited for me to come around properly, which didn't take long, and took me back to the ward. My husband was there, and I was obviously thinking about the fact that we needed to pick the children up. My husband needed to get my son from my mother's, because she's going to be wondering where the hell I was, because she didn't know any of this was happening. She thought I was on a study day and work. So he said, look, I've texted your mother, I said that you had to go to a meeting, and then I'm going to come and get them and get Harry, my son. So I felt a bit more relieved. I was starving. They got me a sandwich and some tea. My husband went and got me some crisps and a bar of chocolate. They also gave me some apple crumble too, which I wolfed down to the point where I was like shoveling it in my face, and the nurse was like, oh, are you hungry, are you? So, haven't eaten since yesterday, so yeah. They did have a little look. She said, can I have a little look at your loss? And they had a little look down there. All I had was like a pad. So I was nothing, she said, you have just a gown on, nothing underneath it. She had a look at the pad, which there was some blood on it, but not much. So my husband left then to go and sort the kids out, to pick them up and get all the suitcases and stuff, because we were going to go on holiday. I kind of just sat there, really. I think I read some more of my book. I really felt fine, like absolutely fine, not even woozy or anything at that point anymore. I asked to go to the toilet. Martin came with me, my husband came with me. I did, when I sit down, quite a lot of blood did come out, like, I don't want to say pouring, but it was kind of pouring. And then they give you the pad, obviously, and I knocked the pad into the toilet. So I had to have another one of those. And then I think that, but the bleeding really wasn't that bad at all. It really wasn't. And I think I was more cautious about changing pads and stuff after this than I really should have been, because there wasn't that much bleeding. But they did let me go. They took my canner out. They let me go about 7. And I we went on holiday, and we were flying from Bristol, so in the car up, we had a McDonald's. I did have some cramps on the way up there. They were, on a scale of 0 to 10, I would say about a 4. And I've been in labour, so yeah, they weren't awful. I could feel them, but I didn't take any painkillers or anything. Changed my pad and stuff when we got to the hotel. I wasn't bleeding through or anything, which was really good. And then we flew the next morning and everything was fine. After it, recovery wise, the following day, the Friday, my stomach was so bloated. I looked pregnant, essentially. Not great when you want to be around the pool, but yeah. But then by the next day, it was fine. I think I had bleeding for about, let me think now. So it's the Thursday we flew. So yeah, I did. And the Friday, yeah, a little bit, and then it kind of tailed off on the Friday to nothing really. I mean, I stopped wearing pads, I would say middle of Friday, yeah, and I didn't wear anything for the rest of the holiday, and I haven't had hardly anything. Like, I had maybe a little bit of spotting here and there, but nothing else. I kind of talked about emotions wise in the other video. I had a bit of a wobble midway through the holiday where I got really annoyed at my husband because I felt like he didn't really care, which he does care, but he didn't really seem to have it, let it bother him. But we had a little mini row, but I've sorted it out. But there were days where I did feel like really tearful, and I think that is your hormones and stuff. I mean, I'm going to feel tearful anyway, but your hormones are like settling back down, and your HCG is probably like boof. So that's not going to help your mood. But I was okay. I was on holiday, so I had to kind of put on my face. So, because in the other video, we were back nearly a week. We have started trying again. I found a lot of research online about you don't have to wait, and I even found that you could still ovulate with having some HCG in your system, which I think I probably, maybe a little bit, because I've run out pregnancy tests and I'm not buying anymore because I'm not doing that. Constantly testing. I've just been using leftover ovulation strips, which I talked about in my other video, which strangely enough, I did get a positive on, what day was it? Day before yesterday. And it's really weird because I was doing them, I don't know if I can show you because if it'll show up. The green ones are the HCG, so you can see the lighter, super dark, slightly lighter. That's yesterday. I'm done. This is I feel like a real YouTuber doing this. It's today's. It's really light and it's not coming into focus. So I don't know. I don't know if that's real ovulation or if that is just like residual HCG in your system that just hasn't gone. So, but I'm not even thinking about it. We're just doing it whenever we want to do it and see what happens. If I have a period, fine, great, I will start from scratch again. But like I said in my other video, my emotions have changed. Originally I was just like, oh, I need to be pregnant again. But as the time's gone on, I have felt better. I have felt stronger and kind of wanted to, how do I explain this? I wanted is the wrong word. I kind of felt like, if it happens now, great. If it doesn't happen now and it takes a month or two, okay, so be it. I mean, I will be gutted. When my period rocks up, I will be gutted and I'll probably be feel very shit, but you know, things, things do happen for a reason. The whole miscarriage thing, obviously, you look into, like, if they research behind miscarriage is there's usually something wrong with a baby, and you know, I don't want to have a baby that's, you know, got something really wrong with it. You know, I don't want to have to make a decision further down the line, you know, if there was something chromosomal and you have to decide later on in the line if you wanted to terminate because that whatever was wrong with the baby was so significant it could really affect their life, quality of life. I wouldn't want to have to make that decision. So as horrible as this is to go through, and I really would not wish it on my worst enemy, because miscarriage is horrific. And it, for me, has taken the joy out of pregnancy. If and when I do become pregnant again, I don't think I'll enjoy it the whole time, because things can go wrong up until the end, and as horrible as that is, I guess that, you know, that's just me. I will constantly be thinking something's going to go wrong, something's going to go wrong. And I hope it doesn't. I really do hope. And I think I heard someone else talk about pregnancy after miscarriage, saying hope for the best and expect the worst, which that's exactly what I'll be doing. And I hope that I can post a video in the future talking about my rainbow baby and maybe even have the baby to show you. But we shall see. And again, like I said in my other video, I wanted to make these two just to kind of give something back, really. I took so much comfort and so much reassurance, not reassurance, so much, I don't know, comfort in hearing other people's stories and getting information from them, that I hope this video or my other one helps anyone, even if it just helps one person, I don't care. Yeah, so again, if anyone wants to message me or leave a comment, I can, if anyone does want to speak to me, I can leave my Instagram. So yeah, hopefully I will have an update video in the future about a BFP, but if not, that's the way it is. So thanks.